Do you want to help your Japanese child learn how to speak English? Is bilingualism something that you are seriously considering for your child? Hello everyone, my name is June from Buzzlingual, and today I'll be going over the 2 core conditions that you will need to satisfy in order for your child to gain bilingual ability. When my daughter was first born, I wanted to make sure that she gains bilingual ability much like I had. So I went around trying to do research, and I found the perfect book. It's called Maximize Your Child's Bilingual Ability by Adam Beck. Now this was a really good book. It was easy to read, and it was broken up into 2 parts. The first part is called Perspectives, and it's all about the importance of the right mindset. The bilingual journey is very difficult, so you're definitely going to need a lot of positive reinforcement along the way, and the first half of this book will provide that. The second half of this book is all about practical skills. He calls them principles, and these are all essentially practical applications that you can apply to help your child gain bilingual ability. This book is written for bilingual learners of all languages, but I especially like it because Mr. Beck's situation is very similar to mine. He lives in Hiroshima, he was raised in the US, he's married to a Japanese wife, and so he has very similar struggles and experiences as I do. So I definitely recommend this book. In this book, he talks about the 2 core conditions that you will need to satisfy in order for your child to gain bilingual ability. And the formula is very simple. It goes like this. Exposure plus need equals bilingual ability. Now, I may be a perfect test case for this. I was raised in the US, but I grew up in a Japanese-speaking home. My mother and father always communicated with me in Japanese. So there was a need to speak English in the outside world, but there was a need for me to speak Japanese with my family. I also got plenty of exposure in both languages along the way. For example, I watched lots of English cartoons, read English comic books, read English books, but I also had Japanese friends who exposed me to a lot of good Japanese pop culture. So I ended up reading a lot of manga and watching anime, listening to J-pop, and even playing video games in Japanese. And so all throughout my childhood and my young adult life, I had plenty of need and exposure for both English and Japanese. And that is what has helped me become a bilingual speaker. Now I understand that for many Japanese parents, it's not as ideal as my situation. The 2 core conditions aren't as clearly laid out for you. But please do understand this. There are always things that you can do to maximize your opportunity to provide both the need and the exposure for your child, even here in Japan. And so today I'll be breaking down those 2 core conditions. Let's start with exposure. When it comes to the bilingual journey, exposure is the #1 absolute. You need it if you want your child to be bilingual. And when we talk about exposure, it must have 2 main qualities. It needs to be sufficient and it needs to be effective. So what does it mean to have sufficient exposure? In other words, how many hours a week do you need to provide English exposure to your Japanese child? Now every family is different, so it's very difficult for me to give you a magic number. But according to research by Barbara Zurer-Pearson, who wrote Raising a Bilingual Child, a useful target for you to reach for is 25 hours a week. I'll say that again. 25 hours a week. That's nearly 30% of the child's waking hours. Now I know what you must be thinking. I live in Japan. I can't speak English much. How am I going to be able to provide 25 hours of English exposure? I understand it's difficult, but do consider this. The closer you can get to that 25-hour goal, the higher your chances that your child will become a bilingual speaker. So always aim high. What's important here is for you to set a realistic goal in terms of English exposure. If not 25 hours, then how about 15 hours? Or even 10 hours? The important thing is to commit to your goal and be consistent with it. Every little bit helps. Now, not only do we need to provide sufficient exposure in English, but that exposure also needs to be effective. Many of you think just plopping your child down in front of a TV and playing an English DVD is good enough. But unfortunately, it's not. Now, if you want your child to gain passive ability, which means to listen and be able to understand English, maybe that's a decent strategy. But if your goal is to have your child be fluent in English, then you need to do more. That exposure needs to be effective. Now, this channel is all about providing you with great ideas of how to maximize effective exposure. But to give you a couple of examples, speak to your child a lot. Read lots of English books to your child. Listen to English music with your child. Play games in English with your child, or even travel together abroad. Now notice that in all of those examples, there was a common element. Yes, English, but also you, the parent. The parent is the important piece of this formula. Without you, it will not be an effective strategy. So always make sure that you are involved in that exposure. If you're watching an English DVD with your child, sit right next to them and engage with them. Talk to them. Ask them questions about what they see on TV. And also reconfirm their understanding after the DVD is finished. In those ways, you can make that exposure much more effective. So remember, the harder you try, the higher the chances of success becomes. And you can always reshape your circumstances to help increase and optimize exposure in English. So that was exposure. And like I said before, exposure is the number one absolute when it comes to gaining bilingual ability. But what about the need? The need may not be as important as exposure when it comes to the bilingual journey. But by providing this condition for your child, it is going to greatly elevate your chances of success. So please do not underestimate the need for need. But I'll be honest with you. Satisfying this condition here in Japan is quite challenging. Why? Because everyone here speaks Japanese. This is a nation of monolinguals. So it is actually very, very rare to have people who can fluently speak both languages. That's not to say that that's the norm in the world. In fact, many countries around the world have people who speak multiple languages. They're multilingual. It's estimated that more than half of the people in this world, around 60 to 75%, speak at least 2 languages. So, being a bilingual is actually the norm in this world, not the exception. If you are trying to speak only in English to your child, you are going to get a lot of strange looks from other people. I experienced that myself. And it did feel awkward at times, and in the beginning I would often find myself whispering to my child in English. But I soon got over that. I learned to develop a thick skin. Because in the end, my goal is to provide bilingual ability to my child, and so I really stopped caring what other people thought. And so it's important to overcome that. Now, if you are about to have a child soon, or you have a toddler from age 0 to around 3, you still have a very, very good chance of providing this condition of need. And why do I encourage that? Because it's going to make teaching English to your child so much easier. Think about it. If you are only speaking to them in English from a very, very young age, that's what they consider normal. And so acquisition of English will occur naturally. You'll never have to sit there and try to force English upon them. And the good news is that you can start to loosen your stance on English only. Around the age of 4, they'll start to understand the world a lot better, and you'll be able to explain to them that that they are special because they can speak both English and Japanese. In my other video, where I interview my 4-year-old daughter, she talks about how she comes from an English family, where we only speak in English with each other. There you can see that we have achieved the need for English in our house. She also understands that she's not like the other kids in her daycare because she speaks English at home, Japanese in the outside world. But she's starting to realize that it is a privilege. It is something special. Much like it was a gift that my parents have given to me. But what if your child is already past the first few formative years? Well, don't worry. It's never too late for you to increase the amount of exposure and provide quality exposure to your child. And that is what this channel is all about. The bilingual journey is not easy. I know that. But every effort that you make will help you get closer to that goal. So please don't stop trying. And please be sure to keep checking back here for more content on how you can provide good exposure to your children. Alright, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. And if you like what you saw today, be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you, everyone. See you next time. Bye.